You're
Hey
live.
guys, welcome to another episode of Expanding the Conversation with Kofi and Richard. Hope everybody's having a great weekend. We're here with
Mhm.
you again today as we had a conversation in the past about the pursuit of um, passion and purpose, the PPP, and Kofi had promised that we would also talk about the PnC, um, which is, I think, as he outlined it, passion and commitment. Uh, so we wanted to talk about the PNC today. We didn't want anybody to feel left out, so we made sure that we were being inclusive as much as we can. Kofi is going to teach us about commitment. Commitment. I think Kofi is it's a necessary ingredient for a great life, but it's hard, man. It's hard. It's hard to stay committed for a really long time. But personally, I know that it's worthwhile. But as I was mentioning to you earlier, I still struggle in some areas of my life um, to, 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 to to be passionately committed to the things that I have to do. Right, I know what I'm
Yeah.
supposed to do. For the most part, I've got a list. I've written it down. I've reasoned it out. But commitment sometimes seems to take a really long time to ingrain. And so I'm happy that you're here to tell me the secret so that I could be more committed to, to my purpose and my passions. But no, I think it's a worthwhile conversation. So I'll let you kick it off. I mean, I've got some thoughts. I'm not completely helpless on this topic, but
Yeah.
I'll let you kick us off and
Uh,
tell us what
I
we need
mean,
to know.
it's a good thing it's a conversation. So I guess we'll talk about it. We'll waddle our way through this, see how we figure this out. Because when I hear commitment, I often think about, when you think about relationships, right? Commitment is a big thing in a relationship. So I always remember in the beginning of a relationship, people always talk about commitment. If the parties are committed, is the girl committed, is the boy committed, and so people are always looking for commitment. And there's this sort of essence of commitment because when you feel strongly about something, it's very easy to commit to it, right? To like put yourself sort of at its like become its martyr, so to speak, like you're dedicated, right? You can't get it off your mind. But there are times with life because life sometimes can take these valleys, and that's when your feelings might change, and that's when commitment tend to wane, right? If you go to the doctor's office and he gives you a report like, hey, your cholesterol is high or your blood pressure is high or something, and all of a sudden there comes this sort of renewed sort of commitment, right? But then you start with the gym, you pick up and you're going and you're going and you're going, and then even like 6 months into it, 3 weeks into it, 2 days into it, for some people, we just lose the drive, right? We lose the drive, and so we don't feel like we have the commitment to go after that thing that we had purposed or planned to do. And so it's a difficult thing. I'd admit it. It's not easy. It is not easy to set a goal and set like a purpose and just stay committed to it. And so hopefully what we could talk about is maybe we could break down this whole commitment issue and talk about how do you remain committed, especially when you don't feel like it, right? Especially when you feel like you don't have the emotional and mental drive to continue. So, what does commitment look like then? Because that's kind of what people talk about too in relationships, right? Because relationships go through this sort of honeymoon phase when people fall in love and everything is great and you have eyes for no one else, and then what happens is complacency. I don't even want to use complacency. I'm just going to say time goes by and sort of the novelty wears
Complacency is a
off.
good word.
Yeah, maybe that too, but the novelty wears off, right? The novelty wears off, and it's like the mind wants to go in a different direction, and so it requires sometimes this conscious, not even unconscious, but this conscious refocusing of one's mind and energy towards the purpose that you had set, towards relationship that you had set, towards the goal that you had set in mind, right? Trying to remain committed to those things. Commitment is a big struggle. It is. I don't know that anybody out there is gonna point a finger and say that they have the commitment in that, right? So I don't, right? I don't have no secret. So the goal is maybe we can learn from each other. What do I do to remain committed? What do you do to remain committed? And maybe some people will chime in, right? But we all agree that in the biggest things of life, the biggest things that we want to achieve, they're going to require commitment, right? Like you're not going to succeed or achieve anything major if commitment isn't part of that process. And I think we could all agree on that, right?
I thought once you acquired that DR in front of your name, you were a massive commitment, but it's kind of bad
Well,
news you're telling me
I
today.
know, no, I've learned a couple of things. I had to remain committed to get that DR, no doubt. But there were
um,
times a lot. There were times when I felt like quitting. There were times when I was about ready to quit. So maybe I could talk about some of that experience. But I think it prepares you for the next stage. But I don't know that then it becomes like easy. I don't know that it makes it easy for the next stage. But you certainly learn and understand you've got something to look at in order how to remain committed. But to get that DR, yeah, it takes a lot of commitment. Absolutely.
yeah. So I certainly agree that it's difficult. I think one of the things that I've observed is um, sort of a correlation between the longer it takes to achieve the objective, the goal, the thing, the result, the greater the need for commitment, right?
Yeah.
Or these levels of commitment versus a shorter term, then it's probably easy to know that if I wake up tomorrow morning and I can go down the road and I get a little raise from my family, I can stay committed to that goal and I can see it to the end. But if I gotta show up every day and do something for somebody and wait a year before I get something, then it becomes much harder, right? And so I use a good test of uh, a representation of commitment. I say, like, if you're trying to get healthy, right, and lose weight and get in shape, commitment is waking up every day, putting in 20 minutes of exercise, and then waiting 2 years before you see any kind of real dramatic results, right? That requires commitment because a lot of times if you wake up and you're putting in effort and you don't see the results right away, it's so easy to give up, right? It's so easy to be like, nah, man, it's not working, right? I got to do something else. And so I think that the further out the result is, and the confirmation that what you're working towards, and what you're passionate you're pursuing is worthwhile, the harder it is to stay committed. And in
Yeah.
my personal my personal struggle with commitment, there are a couple of things that I use. One, I've written down a lot of things, and I've talked about that before, right? That I want to do, that I want to be committed to, that I want to pursue with some degree of passion in my life. And so even just reading those things that I've written down from time to time reinforces the idea, right? Because I've written down why I want to do it and what it looks like once I get it done and all that stuff, right? So I think revisiting those things that you want to stay committed to and asking yourself continuously why stay committed to this goal, to this pursuit, to this thing that I'm that this passion, right, that I'm pursuing. What Write it down, read it often. The second thing I would say is when and you'll know when your commitment is waning, right? You'll know when, like, I was I was talking to a friend. I probably spoke to a couple of friends, and I'm like, man, I know that I'm better when I run, and I know that I want to run, but I just haven't been running lately, right? And so um, once you're aware of it and start talking to your support group, right, the people in your network about the things that you may be struggling with commitment, and I find even a simple pep talk, right? Or somebody just saying, hey, let's talk about this, right? When is a good time for you to do this? Why haven't you done it so far? And then calling you out, right? Because I've had friends be like, Rachel, I
Yeah.
think you're just making an excuse, right? You gotta go do it. And sometimes you need that, right? Sometimes you need that wake up call. And so I think for me, those are a couple of things that I find are helpful. Writing it down and having a support system where you can actually go to, or actually will call you out and be like, dude, like you gotta you gotta get back on the train, right? You can't keep going down
Yeah.
this road, right? It's no good. And so I find those things help with commitment, but like I said, it's still oftentimes difficult.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, that is true. The commitment, so accountability is what you're making reference to, right? Having some system of accountability to help sort of, spread the flame. They say coals tend to burn better when there's multiple coals around them. So if you start going a little bit cold, right, the heat of the other coals, charcoal tends to help keep you going. So accountability is absolutely important. I think a man without friends is a man really, he's a runaway train, right? There's nobody to guide or stop him or tell him that something's going on. So, we need friends, we need accountability. And I think that in itself is very helpful. I could really sit here, Richard, and tell you, and I think a lot of people know this, but I could go through sort of the mechanics of, you know, staying committed. And I think a lot of people may understand that, like you just said, you got to write things down, you got to have accountability. One of the things I'd like to talk about, I think, is that people have to have, believe it or not, I think we have to have faith and hope. And what I mean by that is we often think of faith only in terms of religion, right? In the religious sense. But I personally believe that faith is sort of a human attribute in the sense that there's nothing in life that is absolutely certain, or things that we have to learn to wait for. And because of that, if we were robotic, we would calculate the odds of something, and we wouldn't do it because nothing would have 100% chance of achieving, right? And so most of our lives is filled with something that's sort of uncertain. You go to write an exam, you're not certain what grade you're going to get. You have a good chance of getting a good grade, but even outside of that, and you stay committed, right, to like get to that exam. But even outside of that, I think that there are other things in our lives where we just take a shot, right? We just commit and we take a shot at it. And that requires really a lot of hope in there. And I think one of the things that makes commitment exciting is to be hopeful, right? Like you mentioned the case of losing weight, right? And you think about that and you say someone wants to lose weight. And if they don't see those results by tomorrow after their first day at the gym, they kind of lose, they give up, right? They lose hope, they lose faith that this thing is going to happen, right? And that they have no confidence in this process that it's actually going to lead to something meaningful. And I think that that's a fallacy. I think commitment ultimately is filled with a lot of faith, filled with a lot of hope that the thing that we are pursuing is actually achievable and that we're going to see it. And I think it is part of that excitement that this thing is going to happen, regardless of how long it takes, that helps us to really stay committed in the process. So you think, for example, in educational achievement, right? As difficult as that might be for some people, whether it's your first degree or your master's degree or your PhD, you're sitting there and you're wondering, how am I going to get to the end, right? And how difficult it's going to be. But sometimes it's that hopefulness, right? It's that hopefulness that when I put in the work, even though I don't see the result now, right? It's going to happen. And it's sort of, there's this beautiful biblical scripture that says, faith is the substance of the things we hope for, the evidence of the things we don't see. So it's almost like I don't see the evidence yet, but it's because I still believe in this process. I believe that this thing is going to happen. That often tends to keep it alive, right? So I was just watching a movie, one of the Star Wars movie, and one of the things they talk about is rebellion is built on hope. You know what I mean? And it's like you have to be a hopeful, optimistic person that things are going to work out, or else what you do, Richard, you give up, right? Because when you lose hope in the process, it commitment seems to wane, right? It seems to just wane and go away. So I think an important sort of co-ingredient to maintain commitment excuse me, my earpiece fell, right? An important piece to sort of keep commitment alive is to also keep hope alive, right? And to be hopeful that this process will yield the result for which we are looking for. And I think that helps us to remain committed to it. You go to the gym and you do your curls and you tell yourself, you know what, I believe this is it. This is what's gonna do it. It might not be today, it might not be tomorrow, it might be next week, right? You might start a job and you're trying to make change or you're trying to cause change somewhere, and you get up and you do it every day, and but you remain hopeful, right? You remain filled with hope and faith and optimism that this thing is going to work out the way you want. I think that helps to keep commitment alive. Keep commitment alive.
Yeah, that's I agree with that 100%. I think maybe on a different discussion we probably need to touch on how do we fuel hope, because I was actually pondering that thought this morning, because you're right.
Hmm.
If I don't believe that my actions a month from now, 2 years from now, 5 years from now is going to achieve the result that I'm after, then there's no way that I can stay committed, right? It's almost
Exactly.
impossible, right?
Exactly.
If your brain can't perceive it being possible, if you don't have that hope, I 100% agree that you cannot stay commitment, and we should certainly visit that as a topic, because I do think there's a process that you can have in place to fuel hope just by itself, right? To wake up every
Yeah.
day and have a
Yeah.
process to fuel hope, because I think I agree with you. If you don't have hope, then it becomes really difficult to stay committed. The last thing I'll probably say, Kofi, before I end here, I think is um, one of the things that probably can help. And I have now stayed committed to using this, but I've used the tracker before, where I'd list things that I wanted to do right every day, and then I'd have a check mark every time I did it. But I think when you have pursuits that you're going after, and you want to sort of measure your commitments, I think you can measure it, right? Do I want to wake up every day at a certain time, right? And you
Hmm.
get the mark there. Um, and I think built into that process of some sort of regular accountability, right, as you referred to earlier, should be a little bit of a reward system, right? I think we have to reward
Yeah, that's
ourselves
I like that. I
when we
like that.
stay, right? So even though sometimes you hit in the gym every day for half an hour, and a year in, you see minimal results, I feel like you got to be like, man, I'm gonna reward myself, right? Um, just for that level of commitment, right? Because I think when you do that, sometimes it's encouraging. Whether you go buy a new outfit or something, right? Or if you're pursuing a degree and you're in the first year, you'd be like, man, I'm gonna throw myself a end of first year party, right? I'm gonna invite my friends and I'm just gonna celebrate the fact, and to some extent, I maybe talk about it a little openly, right? Like, hey, this is an accomplishment for me, right? Because a lot of days, and we all go through this, right? We just don't say it out loud often enough. But a lot of days I didn't want to continue, right? And be like, man, I celebrate. I'm celebrating my 1 year into my 4 year degree. I've stayed committed for a year, and I'm going to continue to celebrate. And maybe just have a little milestone every now and again that you celebrate, right? If you're pursuing health, if you're pursuing finances, you're trying to save towards a goal, when you get halfway, right, just go buy yourself some ice cream or something. But have moments in there that I think that reinforces something positive about that commitment that you're making towards that goal. I feel like it can help, um, and should help you just to stay on track, and increase your level of commitment. So I'll
Yeah.
say that in closing.
No, absolutely. No, I think that's great. I agree with you. I think throwing some rewards in there is definitely helpful because it sort of reinforces it in your head. You're gonna get something good out of this, and that's what we often want, right? We often want to have sort of a good memory, for example, or something exciting and fun that comes with that. That again helps to maintain that level of commitment. Keep the positivity up. Stay around positive people that are committed to the same thing. You talked about that. So I think these are all important ingredients in going after purpose, setting our goals and staying behind them. The race is not for the swift, they say, right? But those who can endure definitely to the end. So we pace ourselves, And like you said, Rich, we stay positive, get the right friends, reward ourselves, and push ourselves through. So I agree with you, and I hope our friends out there, our listeners, are inspired and encouraged to stay committed to tasks that they have set themselves and goals that they have set in their lives, whether it's educational, physical, health wise, professional, relational, or otherwise. We agree that without commitment, it's very difficult to be really successful. So be committed, and appreciate you guys listening into the conversation.
Yep. And thank you for being part of my commitment resource, my brother. I appreciate you.
Same here, man. I like how you pull me up sometimes, call me in, and keep
That's
things
right.
going. I appreciate
Get
you, Rich.
get some sleep.
Yes.
Don't burn yourself
Oh no,
out.
I've been doing better than that. I've done. No, I have done. The other night I fell asleep early, man, and the next thing I woke up was like 5:30. But I think I can't remember what time I fell asleep. I just went and I lay down, and that was it.
Very good.
So yeah, working on it, man.
Cool.
Keep it going.
All
All
right.
right,
Have a
take it
good one,
easy.
everybody.
All right, bye, guys.